This is the stuff dreams are made of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm a writer-collector Dave Mandel. Woohoo, Ryan, we're back!
Again, we haven't canceled ourselves.
I'm so tired.
I know.
It was I had like 11
How do people
alarms.
do this?
I set 11 alarms to get out of bed to do this. And it's 12 noon here in LA.
Did it work?
I'm up, but yeah.
But how do people do like the morning radio show guys that get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and do this for 4 hours every day?
I guess your just entire life is just this other thing. I looked into once a little bit, like sort of like what like Katie Couric's life was. I sort of had back in the day when people made TV shows about people working on other TV shows, you know, that thing, that trope, if you will. Like I had a sort of an idea for sort of, again, years before the morning show on Apple, I had sort of a morning show idea. And I was fascinated by the idea of like, you wake up at 4 a.m. to go do your job. And then like, if you go on a date or if you want to have dinner with somebody, that's at like, 6 p.m. and you have to be home and in bed by 8 p.m. And you're just, your day in your life just kind of goes like that. But anyway, if you're still listening, traffic on the ones right now. No, so I don't know. Is that what they do? It's time for what's new in props. And you've got a little something for us. Yes.
I do. Yeah, I am. So I've been offered another Aliens prop. I think as you're the go-to Star Wars guy, I think when it's something Aliens becomes available, I've become the guy where
this is very good. Do you feel it's connected at all to this show or no? This is just people you knew anyway.
It's people I knew anyway, but I don't know. Maybe the show.
Maybe they're hearing you talk about it more. Sort of magnify it. I don't know. I'm just curious.
They're like, he has a job and a problem. I'll call him. He'll buy this thing from me. But so I think unlike the last one, I think this one will actually it's legitimately available and will stick. The thing is, I like it. I'm interested in it. I like it. I like it a little less than the other thing.
Sure.
And the number was like fine, but it's not. Oh, I gotta have it. So I a couple things. It's a sort of collector buying scenario. I'm going to put it in front of you. I have a couple questions.
All right.
And these are the kinds of things that the kind of conversations that Dave and I have all the time, usually not on a microphone. So we'll play this one out for the benefit of our audience. But I feel like if the number came down about 20 to 25%, I would just be interested just on the like, oh, that's a cool piece from Aliens. I would like to have that at that price. I'm happy to have it in my collection.
Sure. At a normal price, it's sort of like, oh, not bad. Why not get it? One more piece kind of in the alien world, so to speak. Okay.
Right.
Is it connected? Is it connected to your, forgive me, set of armor? Is it connected? No. It's not that. It stands on its own. It would not augment that display in any way, shape, or form. No. It would just be the larger Aliens collection. Yeah.
Correct. But it is another, cool, recognizable piece from Aliens.
Not questioning that.
And I don't mean to poo-poo because I am interested in it. It's just like the other thing that's bothering me, and I wonder if you also go through this, is the timing of it. Because the reason I think it's available now.
This is not the week to be offering me anything because it's like I am definitely. And I've been offered some things, and I've definitely, nothing, again, as you say, nothing that has made me go like, oh my God, I have to have it. I got to do it. I've definitely, though, been staring at things through the lens of like, I know what's in that prop store auction. And then obviously there's other auctions to come as well. And so I've definitely been staring at stuff going like, I don't quite need that. Like somebody offered me a couple of really interesting these weird foreign bootleg Star Wars toys that I get a real kick out of. But and as crazy as it sounds, even though these things are completely unlicensed, they're well known. They're sort of well known and they're collectible enough because, again, like everything else, as everybody got all the toys that were made in America and then got all the toys that were sort of made in other countries legitimately, in the quest for like, well, what else can we find? It's like, well, here are these, bizarre, foreign toys that were unlicensed, and so they have big price tags on them, and I'm interested not this week. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and it's like I think there's a bit of war chesting going on for upcoming auctions, and because it's auction season. I mean, that's the thing that we're alluding to, and there are like 3 big auctions coming up in the next
for what it's
2
worth
months.
is just with that in mind, because it is a two-way street, meaning the people selling it are looking to sell for sort of the same reason you don't want to buy. I truly believe you have nothing to lose to just simply say, "This is the best I can. This is my number." You know what I mean? Without offending anybody, and
Yeah.
just go, "This is my number," because it sounds like it's like as you said again. You're not doing a cartwheel, but it definitely sounds like it's something you like. Again, I'm reading
Yeah.
into it, and so I think the honest answer is
Yeah.
to throw your number. Maybe plus or minus $5,000, but whatever, and just and maybe even go that way, which is, look, I think my number's X. I'm going to offer you X plus 5,000, but that's it. That's it for me. You know what I mean? Like I'm throwing in an extra five just because you're offering it to me. It's not your number, but that's it. I
Right.
understand if you don't
And
want
I don't
to,
have to deal
because
with
yeah.
auction
Well,
stuff.
it's just that thing of, I think look, they want to sell it as much as you may want to buy it, which is semi-reluctantly. You know what I mean? It's sort of like I said, it
Right.
is a true two-way street. And that, again, when it's certainly not something you need to live and die for, I think it's the best strategy to be able to kind of go, here's this, and then possibly walk away. And they'll either do it or they won't, or it'll loop around later. But probably the easiest way. I don't know. That's my sort of gut instinct, just in the vacuum of, it is what it is. And actually, and I'm not trying to hijack the what's new in props conversation, but
No, please.
to bring something back up that we talked about previously, is, do you remember me telling you about the Eurotrip storyboards done by the wonderful and
Oh yeah.
talented Ricardo Delgado? I sort of more or less did that, which is, I said, look, this is what I think they're worth. This is the best I can do, kind of a thing. And we kind of went back and forth, and ultimately we got to sort of, more or less the number I was looking for. And, great, done. Did the deal. So the storyboards are on the way, which I was really excited about,
Oh,
because
awesome.
again, I wanted them. I want them. I wanted them, all those things. And I will be very excited once I have them, and I'll put a couple of different ones up just to show them off. But again, forgetting about upcoming auctions, they had a value to me of X. You know what I mean? Like we talked about, and I sort of, this is what I want, and I totally understand if you don't want to do it, but we did it, and I don't know, it was very pleasing, because I'm getting something that I did want, but I'm not going to be staring at it going, oh, why did I pay that? Do you know what I mean? And there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
So that was a good, for me at least, mini version of a what's new in props, or at least the conclusion of a what's new in props.
Well, that's
Yeah.
great. And is it all of them, or did you
It
buy
is
a
all of them. It
selection in
is
the end?
truly
Or
all of them, and I think it ultimately
oh, okay.
was. And again, I don't want to. I actually think he'd be a great guest. Not to specifically talk about this, but I think we should talk about storyboards at some point, a little more in depth.
Storyboarding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
storyboarding. And I think at the end of the day, again, I can't put words in his mouth. I don't think anyone was banging his door down for the Eurotrip storyboards. And so, it's like, obviously he knows the work he put in, and obviously he was paid to do them. And ultimately he was, I think, happy that I valued them, happy that I was happy with the job he did and all of those things. Again, I can't put the words in his mouth, but I think ultimately, it was, something in the hand was worth more than whatever in the bush, or is that a prop phrase? Is that something people say?
I think that's
Yeah.
fine.
So that was good. So that was a positive what's new in props. Do you have anything else? Because I had one other thing that's sort of bugging me, but not exact sort of what's new in props, but what's new in props adjacent. Do you have anything else you wanted to throw in on?
No, that was
Well,
my
I think
excitement
I
for the
would,
week.
like I said, I would do that. I would offer that up and just, be able to walk away. I think
Okay.
you'll be a happy person. And if you get it, you'll be a doubly happy person. The
Right.
one other thing I wanted to bring up, and this has been a week where, and again, it's not specifically props, but I think it's connected to props. It's connected to all collectibles. I'm certainly seeing it in the world of comics and comic art, which is this week, a Andy Warhol, what was it, Marilyn Monroe piece,
Oh
sold,
yeah.
quote unquote, for a record price. And if you Google it and look it up, everything is record price, record price, record price. And it sold for like $195 million, something like that. And it is a record price. The previous price was, I think, a Basquiat that was like, I think around $40 million less, which was also an incredible number.
So for an
American piece
for an American
of art.
artist.
Yes, a piece of American art. Exactly.
Okay. But not for a Warhol, because it's a record for a Warhol.
I believe it's for a Warhol.
Right?
It's for, it's for anything American and or Warhol.
Yeah,
But, again, it's not Picasso. It's not,
Okay.
Monet and those guys, but it's starting to get up there.
Yeah.
And again, bravo, great piece, Marilyn Monroe, iconic, Warhol, all of those things. But again, like I said, to me, it's the headlines. Headline, headline, headline. Record, 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 record. And I guess what's really starting to piss me off is a combination of the laziness of the, I'll call it the art press, the collectibles press, just that the headline of the record-breaking price is the easiest headline to write. And as far as I'm concerned, obviously I understand why it's great for the auction houses and all of those things, and they all want it because you put it out there and people are talking about your auction house and they're talking about your auction. And then if I have a Warhol on my wall, maybe I go, oh my God, a record-breaking price, I should sell mine. And that happens with props. We see it all the time. And I don't begrudge anybody wanting PR. But on sort of the role of the newspaper, the role of the internet headline, the role of whatever, like the TV news that decide to cover it, as we say on the show, do your research. And I guess what I'm getting driven crazy by was $195 million. Okay, number one, their estimate was $200 million. So if their estimate was $200 million, they were thinking $200 million and above.
That's a big
And
thing.
it isn't. It's $5 million less. Now, again, a huge number. I'd love $5 million. I'd love $195 million. But it is less than the estimate that they thought they were going to get. And I'm sure it had something to do, by the way.
Yeah, they set that number. The opening bid number is always set to get action. So they don't think it's low, but they think it's low enough that they're going to get action. Nobody wants to hang a price tag on something at an auction.
In their mind, it was going to be $200 million and above. And that $195 million isn't a real $195 million. It was whatever, $170 million plus VIG, or 160 something plus VIG. So again, that's not even the $200 million. But all of that, some of the articles have it in there, some of them don't. But to me, the more interesting issue was this week. Obviously, there's the whole crypto crash going on. Lord knows what's going on with the Russian oligarchs and their money getting blocked. And you have a piece of art that is more often than not getting bought by a lot of these Russians, by crypto guys and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, it didn't get to $200 million. And again, I understand it's only a little bit below, but there is this overall thing with these again, the newspapers, of just simply printing sort of this result, whether it deserves the headline or not. And there is sort of this, just the gospel of, well, the auction house said it. And I just think, I guess the newspapers, the media, whatever, has got to stop just reporting only these record-breaking prices blindly, because there's more going on there. And there's more going on in the collectibles world too. It's sort of like, and we've talked a little bit about this before, when something gets put up for auction and they write a big to-do about, like, oh my God, this piece is in this auction. Like years ago, there was we've talked about the Ben Kenobi robe. And then most people ended up thinking it was fake, and it doesn't even sell, but there's no follow-up article. And I guess, again, I understand why the auction houses want these articles, want the news, whatever, but I guess it's beginning to really drive me crazy because it's all you're reading. And I think just for our listening audience, you've got to take those headlines with a grain of salt. You just have to. And I just encourage you to sort of dig a little deeper into some of these record prices and whatnot. There's a thing that used to happen, not necessarily with auction houses, but with, like, just doing deals with people. And I remember doing deals with people and there was one guy in particular who constantly was talking about, like, comparables that he had sold. So he was constantly telling you, like, well, I want you to buy this thing, and I sold one for, $200 million. And you start to go, did you? Because if you sold one for $200 million, why don't you sell this one to that same person? Because I'm offering you $11. And I know it's not too, and again, that's where I'm starting to feel like the auction houses are sort of coming out. And I don't know, it's just something that is definitely sort of bugging me. And I don't know, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I think, when you read the coverage of these, even the prop auctions, which is certainly, that's a world we're very close to and follow, the coverage of them is so surface. It's really just about the numbers, because nobody cared about any of this stuff when it was selling for $5,000 and $6,000 and $7,000. Now they suddenly care. They don't really care. They just care because it's clickbait, right?
No, that's
It's
exactly
a
it.
way
It's
to
a
get a click.
very
Oh, what?
quick and easy, just like, yeah, no, oh my God, I'm going to click on it. And again, I get why the auction houses love it, but I don't know. I am
Right,
more and more aware of, auctions that didn't live up to what they were supposed to do. Also, look, certainly in the prop world, we've seen things where, you know, big numbers on pieces that we've thought have problems, you know what I mean, for a variety of reasons, you know what I mean, whether it's fake or not quite as screen matched or whatever. And nobody wants to write those articles. I mean, look, you and I are right here right now, and I'm the first to admit we're a little semi hesitant to sometimes specifically call people out, because I guess at the end of the day we're two guys sort of doing a podcast on our own, and nobody wants to get sued, and I understand that, you know what I mean. And so they can't prove it's real and I can't prove it's fake, but there's a reason that piece didn't sell after being on the cover of an
right,
auction or whatever it is. And
right.
so look,
Pay
our
attention to the
hands are a
story
little
between the
tied
lines. Yeah,
too. We can hint at things, we can talk about stuff, but I guess I beg the audience to don't just take the press release as gospel, I guess is what I guess what I ultimately
yeah,
saying. So an extension
yeah,
of the
yeah. I
the do
agree.
your
Because
research axiom. Sorry, go ahead.
if someone wanted to do a more interesting article that required a little effort on the Marilyn Monroe piece, there's an interesting story in there about
Yes.
crypto and about the explosion in the collecting market and about what would that painting have sold for uh 12 months
12 months
ago,
ago. How about 3 months
before
ago? 3 months
be,
ago. I mean, literally, yeah.
yeah, before
Yeah.
the Bitcoin crash, before the all the Russian money was blockaded. I mean, you have to imagine there was a Russian buyer that would be looking for that thing, somewhere. I mean, to me, if that piece went in the collector's market that was going on is 6 months ago, when we saw the
That
prop
piece
prices
one
explode
year
and that
ago,
crazy
same
comic
auction
page
year,
go
basically last spring, I,
300
I think
million.
easily
Yeah,
300 million. Again, I don't know anything about art, but I guarantee you 300 million. I
yeah,
mean, I think the only good thing we can say about the Russian oligarch money is, luckily, thanks to the British government where you're now living, and the sheer sort of amount of like property owned by Russian oligarchs and how much of the money has infiltrated the British government, I'm guessing they can probably find a way to bid on a piece of art, because oh man, your country is corrupt, my friend. Just overtaken by Russian oligarch money. Yes,
my country. I'm
your
just
country. You're
squatting
like a
here, my
Russian
friend.
oligarch, being like living there in the Soviet Union, living there in the UK, buying your way into society. That's what you are, my friend. Anyway, little
Yeah,
politics for you.
I'm okay with it.
Well, we've got a really interesting show, one we've sort of threatened for a long time. And I think it's finally kind of
Yeah,
coming together in a good way. It's Dave and Ryan's "The Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of" book club, which there is no
yeah.
segue. We spent about an hour this morning trying to figure out, was there anything we could say about props or something that would bring up the word book, and then we would be able to go, speaking of books, but not even close. So speaking of Russian oligarchs, today we're going to be talking about books. No, I think there's a mix of people on our show who listen to the show that are, that are new to it, that are relatively new to it, and I think even for some of the old timers, there are just a lot of wonderful books that I know for me have been both the gateway into props, and by the way, a little bit also for my own career. Just the making of movie books and things like that kind of got me very interested in, you know, screenwriting and all of that kind of stuff. But books that I both look at constantly or have been inspiration, bringing it back to props, for sort of my prop collecting world. And we just thought it'd be fun to go over a couple of them and talk about them. And would love, by the way, to hear any that you love. So please tell us about any books that, because Lord knows there's a
Hmm.
load of them. And I think we sort of said, hey, we'll talk about a couple each. But I don't know, I made a crazy list that just like, because once you start, you can't stop. And yeah. I
The
figured
same
there'd be
thing
some
happened to
big
me. Yeah,
categories too, like we could do Star Wars and talk about a lot.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, Star Wars is a whole category. I mean, for me, it's really interesting because for me, I love books. I think this is a thing for most writers. We loved bookstores as kids. We were always interested in writing and stories and things like that. And the physical object of a book is just something that's very appealing to me as a collector and a keeper of objects and things like that. And I just love to fill my office and workspace with like big
Yeah.
coffee table books,
Well, I
reference
find
books
them
and things
both.
like that.
I love the reference
And
of it, but I also do find them inspiring. I mean, not specifically, again, I'm not
yeah,
making a whatever, I can read a Lord of the Rings book and be really inspired by, the art of the Lord of the Rings movies, but not necessarily be making my own Middle Earth trilogy. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I do find it
yes, yes,
inspiring. I
yeah,
really, I really, really do.
yeah,
And I think there's books that, obviously show pictures and things where you can go, oh my God, this is the definitive reference book. And then there are other books, sort of, again, now we're falling into more of some of the making ofs where props are tangential to the overall story, but they are
part
part
of
of
the
the
story.
story, and scenes and how things were shot, and sometimes information about who made things or how they got it and things of that nature
Yeah,
that often can fill in some of those corroborating details that, like, that we like to sort of, the third leg of the tripod thing, that sometimes later on in your hunt you may then hear somebody tell you, oh, this is how we did this because we only made two of them, and it's like, that's exactly what it said in the book, and that's kind of a cool thing.
yeah.
And I don't know, it's I guess why I don't know, I thought it would be fun to do this, and so I'm glad we were doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't exist here, but in LA, when I set up my office, 10 years ago when we bought our house, the design theme that I sort of went for was sort of gentleman's library. So I set it up like an old library with these artifacts that have been put into the bookshelves in and amongst the books. So I collected all these giant, reference tomes from film and television, art books and whatever, and just filled the room with them, and then would make little individual display cases for my pieces and kind of sandwich them in between the books so that when you walk into the place, it felt, there's the leather couch and an
Just
architectural flat file in
felt
there
like
and
a
all that. And it
Russian
just felt like an
oligarch's
old
old
library.
library. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
the things too that
But,
it's very cool. I love your
it was
office.
cool.
One
So,
of the things that's super interesting too is we are living in a, I don't know, I'll simply say sort of a semi golden age of prop books, because to kind of take it all the way back, or at least
mhm.
as back as I can go, when I first moved to LA, which would have been 95, and I started visiting LA sort of regularly in the early 90s, for the most part a lot of these books didn't exist. Like, let's just start with that. And so the books that did exist were sort of
Mhm.
fewer and far between. And the early books, and again, obviously I'll start with a Star Wars book, because again, it was one of the early collectible books that I remember having to sort of go out and try and find a good copy of. But there was that original The Art of Star Wars book by Carol Titleman. I don't know if you ever had that book, the white covered hardcover book. Yeah. And it
I
was a
actually,
yeah, it
yeah, I
was a
actually never,
very
never did.
hard
I
to
know the book,
find
but I
book.
never had a copy.
And there's an Empire Strikes Back one, an Empire Strikes Back sketchbook, and then there's a Jedi one as well. And these books, especially like in hardcover, were some of the first things I ever bought at like some of like Larry Edmonds bookshop and some of the in LA, and some of the other old movie bookstores that are now gone.
Oh, cool.
And so there was that, and there was the Raiders of the Lost Ark illustrated screenplay. Do you know, you must have had that book? Yeah.
Yep. That one I know. Yep.
So
Yep.
those were some of the, for me, the first, and again, obviously Star Wars, but those first sort of entryway books that were kind of, showing, again, not jam filled with props, but were sort of taking you behind the scenes a little bit. And then there were some of these early paperbacks like the Jaws log, the Godfather papers. Again, these are the
Yep.
books I remember like hunting these like Hollywood used bookstores to buy, and they were not in print, and some of them are back in print. Like the Jaws log by Carl Gottlieb is about his experience on the making of Jaws, but
Yep.
screenwriter. And nowadays I think it's back in print, but there was a long period of time where it wasn't. You could only find this tiny little paperback, and it would come and go. And it was always something like at the Larry Edmonds bookstore, they would have it in the front of the store because they would like get it in, stick a big price on it. And it was, they kind of kept it behind the counter in a great way. But that, and also the making of, what was it? I wrote it down, the actual title. Hold on, let me find it. Oh, Once Upon a Galaxy, The Making of Empire Strikes Back, which again were these small paperbacks about the making of these books. And these were the
Yeah.
things that, I mean, you can read that book and boy, you read that and you can feel the Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher affair in a couple of the scenes. You can, they never say it, but you can feel it. It's like you read it and you just go, oh, wow. But anyway, those were some of the, for me, the introductory prop books. And some of them have been outdone and reprinted and whatnot, but those were my entryways into these sort of both making of, but also these books that started to show me these things like some of the art and storyboards and whatnot that I think all went into, I don't know, not necessarily turning me into a collector, but certainly like the desire to own some of this stuff is the easiest way I can explain it. So those for me were the entryway ones. I don't know if you had like a first book that jumped out at you.
Yeah. And it's funny because again, our eras
Yes.
are sort of, overlapping, but there were two books for me that were from the 90s that probably postdated all these things. The first one was from Star Wars to Indiana Jones, the best of the Lucasfilm
Yep, which
archives.
is a
So that's
fantastic
the book with
yeah.
the red spine, and the top half of the cover is the Star Wars, and the bottom half of the cover is the I think the Indy hat and the whip, the sketch of it. And it's a photo book that takes you through the Lucasfilm archives, telling the story of Star Wars and Indiana Jones with the objects. And that was one of the first that came out in like 1995. And I remember running into that in the store when I always go to Borders Books and Music before I went to the movies over at the Garden State Plaza and in New Jersey. And I just ran into that on this sort of new shelf, and my mind was blown because it was this pictorial book that beautiful. It's not much
Yeah.
writing, but it's more of a caption book,
Right.
and
It's
just seeing that stuff.
just to be very official, Mark Cotta Vance. I guess I wrote it down too because I have two copies of that. I have my like nice copy, and I have my copy that's like dog-eared with like with like
dog-eared,
like post-it notes all over it. Yeah, because it was
and that's still available. You can
oh
you can find
yeah
it on Amazon. You might have to buy it used, but it's still available and it's not crazy price. But that is a must-have reference book for anything Lucasfilm. And then the other big one came out a little bit later than that. I remember it was very expensive because it came out and then it was a couple years before I actually went and bought it, which was the Star Wars Chronicles, the Deborah Fine book, the really big one with the sort of folding Velcro cover, the slipcase cover that it went into. It's sort of gold and silver and black. That giant doorstop of a book, and that's just pictures of Star Wars pieces from the Lucasfilm archives, and it's incredible.
I was trying to remember the origins of that book because for some reason I feel like I had a Japanese.
Is there a Japanese?
Yeah, I think it was a Japanese book first. So I spent like hundreds of. I mean, again, this is like when books cost as much as props did at the time. You know what I mean? I spent like a couple. I feel like at the time like a couple of $100 to get the Japanese book first, and then eventually there was the American edition. And again, a chance to see for the first time. And again, it was all stuff that was in the archives, but some of it there were obviously doubles and triples of that some later showed up out in the world. And that opportunity, especially, before I was able to go to the archives so many times, that book made things, at least it was a nice sort of stand-in for the experience of visiting the archives as many times as I have.
Sure. And now you've obviously, thrown it and your very expensive Japanese copy away.
I burned them. Literally.
So many
I made my own book that I've taken pictures of everything in the archive with me next to it, kind of like smiling. And I made my own Chronicles book.
Yeah.
Sort of me.
It's a limited edition, only available to other people who have been to the archives. So you've given it out to all your friends, but they already seen it because they've been there.
But to this day, those are 1,000% must-have books. I mean, I think, if you're building your library, and I think, I think there's, I was thinking about categories and stuff. We probably should just get this out of the way because, if you're trying to build your prop reference library and you're starting with Star Wars, I mean, you have to have the Chronicles book. You have to have the archives book. I would tell you to go out and get those Art of books. I think those are incredible. And then let's just jump in. You got to
I
have
don't have those. I actually need to
you
track
should
those
get
down.
those. You would love those. And do you have the Raiders one though? That are the Raiders Illustrated one, because that has
I do have. I have the illustrated screenplay somewhere.
That has the Spielberg stuff in it, which is great. His little storyboards. The Art ofs are fantastic. They are wonderful. I think they updated them for the special edition or something. Just do yourself a favor, buy the old hardcovers, like from like whenever it was, like the late 70s, early 80s. They're just wonderful. But I
also remember the little paperbacks too. I mean, I don't know how they were first published, but there's one for Star Wars, Raiders, Empire, and Jedi, and they're all in that little slim sort of choose your own adventure sized paperback. You know what I'm talking about? And it's like the making of Star Wars, the making of Empire, the making of Jedi,
the making of Empire,
the making
is
of Raiders.
The one that is just, to me, that's the one I was referencing. That's just incredible.
And it's got like a gray cover.
No, the one I was thinking of has a red cover, so maybe there's a different one. I'm thinking of the one the Empire one that I remember has a red cover by I wrote his name down. Alan Arnold did the Empire one that I'm thinking of. That to me was the more just more in the trenches one that I am a huge fan of. Yeah,
and that's where the journalist or whatever, the writer, is following the production.
Yes, exactly.
Right? He's there on the production taking. Yes, it's totally it's that book. But there was also one for original Star Wars, or maybe just Empire and Jedi. Maybe just Empire and Jedi, because
I don't think the Star Wars one definitely has like Star Wars storyboard kind of a thing and stuff like that. I'm sorry, Star Wars storybook.
Okay.
That has some making of stuff in it, but I'm not sure there was an actual paperback making of. Yeah,
official
exactly.
making of. Yeah. Okay. And then there's a Raiders one too, which is also very good.
Which gets also into a lot of the stunt stuff, which is really wonderful as well. And these are all just like paperbacks. If you're lucky, you can find them. They're not too yellow. They're not too stinky. They're kind of great. But I do think there are all these Star Wars ones, and again, none is better or worse, and it's worth sort of throwing them all out there. I mean, I think certainly our friend Brandon Allenger's book, Star Wars Costumes, is an essential own for your Star Wars library. Steve Sansweet's book, specifically From Concept to Screen Collectible, which again, it's prop adjacent, but basically just kind of covering sort of all of the obviously the toys and everything and whatever. And he's also written a poster book and whatever. And again, so I just think they're essential. And then Rinzler, I think, is a category unto himself. But the three main making of Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi are definitive, both in terms of not only the reference photos in them, but also the stories and the really like digging into and hearing from. And by the way, I think, like, for example, I think he uses some of the recordings that were done. I'm sure it's all in dispute, whatever, that like Charles Lippincott did, that guy Arnold did for his making of book. Some of the same interviews are being referenced. But in terms of really getting into the model shop to the early ILM days and how things are done and when they were done and all of that kind of stuff, those books are just incredible. And the Rinzler books are insane. And I don't know, that's like how you build your Star Wars library. And then I think we can almost continue with Rinzler, because his body of work of these making of books.
Well, hang on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Before you go to his more physical books from him, if you can still get them, and I think they're still available on like the Apple bookstore, the ebook store. There are those ebook versions of the Rinzler Star Wars books that are interactive.
I think it's Kindle too. I think on the 3 Star Wars books.
Oh, is it?
I think it's on Kindle as well. But anyway, I thought they scrubbed it. They may have. But the 3 books.
Yeah.
There is this sort of, whatever you want to call it, Kindle.
It's an ebook,
whatever, that has interactive scenes and sounds and all sorts of stuff, and it's one of the, I mean, so incredible.
He references, for instance, the Darth Vader and Luke conversation in Jedi when Luke is captured or surrenders and is brought before Vader on that set that's the kind of the platform outside the AT-AT. And they talk about that really pivotal scene, father and son seeing each other for the first time he's been Jedi. And then, they talk about it in the printed book, and it's all interesting. But then the ebook has the dailies from the encounter with David Prowse doing the voice dialogue
in his crazy thick Welsh accent.
I actually think it's Marquand off screen, the director off screen feeding the lines, because I think it might have been, I don't know whether it was Prowse in the costume at the time or whatever, but I think it's actually Richard Martin, the director, feeding Luke lines off, and it's just a fascinating relic from the period with all the, you know, the film scratches on it, and it's just great. And there's just a ton of that treasure that's in the ebook versions that's not in the printed version, so it's actually worth getting both, to have the
And
hardcover
also,
hard
besides
copy
the
on your
fact that,
shelf, and
by the
then
way,
the
these
ebook to
books are
reference.
so big and so heavy, they're not like you can lay down in bed and read the Rinzler books. Like, you have
Yeah,
to like read them at a table, basically, which is,
at a
yeah.
table,
So it
right?
is. It's great to be able to read them, you know, on on a device and then have them for reference. And Rinzler, just to I just to because these I don't know, I have them all and they're worth having. He went on to make a making of Alien and Aliens book and a making of the Planet of the Apes book. Um, and
And he also did Indiana
oh
Jones.
my
His
gosh, I
first book
completely,
was an
yes, I
Indiana
completely forgot
Jones.
the Indiana Jones book too. Yes, and they're
I think the first, well, either the 3 or the 4 films
all
at the time, because I
four
think it was
in
made to
there.
coincide
The
with
information on the first
Crystal
one
Skull.
is really great, and then each subsequent movie gets a little bit less, and then a little bit less,
Thinner.
yes, and then a little bit less. But the coverage of the first one of Raiders itself is fantastic. I mean, I liked it all, but that section in particular is just fantastic. Yeah. But Planet of the
Yep.
Apes and the two Alien books. I will
Yep.
admit I have not yet made it to the second Alien book. I haven't read Aliens. I've read Alien and I read Planet of the Apes, and Aliens will probably be one of my next. But they're just incredible. They are truly incredible, and you could probably break a bookshelf with just those books. That's how heavy they all are. But yeah, pretty insane. Yeah.
Yeah. So while we're on Alien and Aliens, there was this great book that was published at the time, or it wasn't maybe at the time, but it was in the 90s. It was sort of in the era before there were a lot of books about these, called the Aliens Technical Manual, which was it's a green book. It's written by Lee Brimacombe Wood. That's Brimmicombe hyphen Wood, and it's basically like kind of an RPG guide, where it's like it's treating the aliens hardware as though it
Right.
actually
It's like
existed,
it's
and it's
real.
describing
Yes,
what it is.
exactly.
Yeah, and they did this with the Star Trek, had that great technical
Right, which I
manual,
remember you
the
saying
next
you were kind
generation
of a nut
technical.
for as well. Right, that was a
I
book you
was,
liked.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
original art, I did, and the original art came up for the Enterprise blueprint and all that. But that book is really cool, because there's a bunch of photography of the actual hardware from the film. The guy that was writing the book was able to source a bunch of the actual, the pulse rifle and the incinerator and the marine armor and the dropship and things that were either in the Fox archives or in the hands of collectors or wherever, and was able to pull a bunch of these things and photograph them in the book. So the information in the book, the text isn't as necessarily as interesting, but as a photo reference, it's really incredible. And there was nothing out there on Aliens at the time when that came out. And then there's another one, because I love H.R. Giger as an artist. He wrote this thing called the Alien Diaries, which it's a little bit like the Jaws
Right.
log, the Carl
His
Gottlieb book we were
experience,
talking about. It's Giger's experience of making Alien, but through the eyes of the guy trying to design the creature. And because he's not fussed about anything other than the xenomorph, so it's really interesting to just look at the movie through that POV. And also it's Giger himself, it's his pen, and they've published the book in such a way that they actually scanned his journal pages, so
Oh,
it's
that's
not
excellent.
a it's not a a typed retyped transposition of his stuff. It's actually his writing. You can see because he was very frustrated at points, because he'd never worked in film before, and Ridley was very demanding, and he thought he had been fired at some point. But it's just a really interesting way to experience the making of Alien through a very particular point of view. So that book is really good. And there's also another.
Oh, I don't know that one. That's really cool. I'm going to check that one out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one's really, and it's gorgeous. It's like built as a collectible book. It's really thick. It's got one of the little bookmark slip that goes through. It's really cool. And then there's another Giger book called Giger's Alien, which came out relatively close to Alien. It was like in the 80s, but it's all of the artwork that Giger had done that got him the job on Alien. So it's a very specific look into the artwork of H.R. Giger, but built specifically around Alien. So the work
the
that
things that Ridley
Ridley
Scott was
saw
going
that
kind of
got him
like
the
that
job on
one, like
Alien.
that one, like that one, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And then also the stuff that he eventually did for the film. So it kind of covers before and after, or before and during. And it's very good and a total worthwhile reference. Because there's not actually, other than Rinzler's Alien book, there's not much on the other non-creature stuff on Alien, like
Right.
the spacesuits and the Nostromo and things like that. Like that you're going to get in the Rinzler book. But the Giger stuff, go to those Giger sources because they're very good.
That I'm gonna get both those Giger books. I'm gonna order them as soon as we're done here. Next on my list,
I'm keeping a little list too of your
next on
stuff.
my list, I sort of jumped down to, but connected as is always, sort of, we're in space, so why not? 2001, and certainly a movie that obviously there's a million books, but the two that jumped out for me, one I read recently, which was Space Odyssey. I think you recommended it to me. Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, Arthur C. Clarke, and the Making of a Masterpiece by Michael Benson, which is just a, behind the scenes sort of not blow by blow, but definitely kind of taking you through the entire thing, starting with Arthur C. Clarke and his writing, where Kubrick was in his career coming off Dr. Strangelove, his desire to starting him digesting all sorts of sci-fi, finding Clarke, getting in bed with him, then kind of figuring stuff out, the changes in it, but then also very much blow by blow into the effects work and how that all came together. And as that was happening with the story and whatnot, it's pretty fantastic. And in the book, one of the characters that's certainly in there is this guy, Harry Lang, who was an actual, I don't know what to call it, an artist for NASA. He worked at NASA doing tech design, and then basically got hired by Kubrick and started doing design for Kubrick because he was looking for that level of authenticity, and ended up kind of going into a giant film career that went on to, he did stuff on Star Wars. Like there is, I have a piece in my collection by Harry Lang of, he was doing like, again, drawings of like, like cockpits and parts of the Millennium Falcon and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy who worked for NASA and then went into the business of making sort of fake spaceships, which I find just fascinating. And there's this wonderful book called The 2001 File. It sounds very similar to your Giger book.
Yes.
Harry Lang and the Design of the Landmark Science Fiction Film by Christopher Frayling, that basically is a cornucopia of the Harry Lang drawings. And I mean, they are art, but they are the drawings for fantastic. 2001. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about 2001. It is what it is, but to sort of see the drawings that went into it and the level of, again, what else can you expect from a Stanley Kubrick movie? Specificity and detail and like functionality that, I think just, shines through on screen. Both books incredible. One for the narrative and one for, again, the sort of making of, if you will, the pieces, the art, the drawings, those things. Just incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah. So that gives me two kind of branching pathways to go on. One is, I believe that Harry Lang book, which I have and it's amazing, was published by Real Art Press, RAP. And Real Art Press is actually a great resource to go to just for if you're looking for really cool coffee table books on artistic subjects. They make a bunch of really cool music reference books. They did this really cool Metallica one for the 30th anniversary of the Black Album. There's a great Zeppelin book.
Let's save that for our other podcast. Let's save that for our music podcast.
50th anniversary. But they also had an amazing. They did a 50th anniversary edition of Once Upon a Time in the West. It's a making of book done at Real Art Press, and it's like chunky and big and pictures and the story of the film, and it's
this
really,
is going to be a really
cool
great day for Amazon right now as I just order thing after thing after thing.
And hunting down. Actually, you can buy if you think Amazon is evil, you can go and buy off of right off the Real Art Press website.
Even better.
It's actually
the
same price. And the other place I was going to go from that is Toshin, because Toshin is like the coffee table bookmaking company. If you don't know Toshin, go to their website. It's all incredible. They have that
their
great
2001 book
that you and I remember going and picking that thing up and having to like haul it in the dead heat of Beverly Hills summer back to our cars. and I had picked up Brandon's copy for him, and I had 2 of them, and you were just laughing at me as I was like, dying in a puddle of sweat on the way back to our cars. But it was incredible. It came in like an obelisk.
It was
and
just
there was
nuts.
a script book in it, and a book about the monkeys in it, and then the making of. But it's the making of story done in the incredible Taschen way with all the beautiful photography. And I think that the limited edition no longer exists, or if
I think
it does,
it's like
many
a lot of money, but I don't think I think I was going to say the regular edition, which they do
though
usually
in the mini format.
I think everything is in there. It just lacks the spectacularness of the presentation. Yes,
the
but
awesomeness
I do believe
of the original.
Content-wise, it's all there, I believe.
Correct. And there's also that going with 2001. There's also that great Kubrick Archives book, which covers his whole
Kubrick Archives book that they did,
and 2001 being in there,
is just wonderful insanity because he kept everything, and they kind of get into his files. And there's that wonderful documentary about his archives, which the name escapes me. Oh, is it called Boxes? Yes. And it's all about everything
Kubrick's
kept.
Boxes.
And they also did a book, Taschen did, on his never made Napoleon movie, of which in the archive book they show you a little bit, where he basically created this like flip file, if you will, of every day of Napoleon's life, like for like a couple of years where he was like working on the movie. He like had figured out like more or less what he was doing every day. And so it's just these cards that'll say like, like whatever, April 8th, whatever, 17, whatever year. This is where I admit I know who Napoleon is, but I couldn't name the year if my life depended on it. 1780s, maybe 1760s, 80s, something like that.
Right?
So something that's my 81. Best guess. But it'll be like May 4th, picnic with Josephine. May 5th, left for the battle of whatever, and it's just like, it's nuts. I mean, it's really crazy. And this is a movie he didn't make. I mean, just fantastic. And so that shows up in the archive book, and then it also shows up in this book that they did specifically about everything he had put together for this Napoleon movie that never happened. Costume design, set designs, just everything.
And it looks like an old it sort of looks like an old-timey Victorian reference book, like this big green leather thing. And it is that it's scans of his notes and things that he did for the Napoleon film. And Taschen is just, it's actually been a good while since Taschen's put out a really meaningful film book. So I'm kind of waiting for their next one.
Well, I mean, it's a funny thing. And again, I'm a huge Taschen fan, but they've done their 3 Star Wars books, which are fine, but not a lot of, from my perspective, with all the other books I have, I don't know, it was not like it was. I mean, I understand from a sales perspective why you make a Star Wars book, but there was not a lot of new, which is not make them bad, but just not for me. I own them, but I guess is the easiest way of expressing it. Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's on my coffee table.
There it is.
You can see it. That's my the Star Wars archives, and it's the original trilogy. But what I like about it, first of all, it's gorgeous. It's huge. It's big, beautiful pictures. It looks great sitting on your coffee table. And if you only ever read one, if you want to read one book that covers the whole original trilogy, you don't want to go down all the different rabbit holes. It's all somewhat
very
there,
much so, very much
in
so. It's
some
just
form.
If you have everything else, it's not. That's the easiest way, and it's not a bad criticism. It just sort of is. I love their Billy Wilder book is insane. I mean, their books are insane and wonderful, and so I'm a huge fan.
So hey everybody, the Prop Store live auction, Los Angeles live auction, is coming June 21st to the 24th. In Los Angeles. It's a live auction. You can go in person, raise your paddle for the first time in 7 years, and it's going to be great. And they are so eager to take your money that they are actually offering payment plans. So
they are making it easier. They are making it so much easier to give them a lot of money with their new payment plans
to mortgage your future.
Yes. They've got all sorts of ways. Payment plans, for example, an interest-free payment plan for up to 3 months on a purchase of a hammer price of over $1,000. This allows you to spread the purchase out throughout the year and gives you some additional time to raise funds to pay off your new purchases. You can sell me and Ryan some of the stuff that you want to get rid of while you get, then when
That's
you
right.
raise the money. You put down 20%. The rest is split over time period of your choice, up to 3 months. You don't get this type of interest-free option from any other prop auction house, or maybe even just auction house. I don't know. I'll say auction house, not just prop auction.
And they
house.
also offer, I don't think so. And they also offer credit card payment option. Unlike some others, they say, PropStore does not charge an additional fee for credit card payments, throwing a little shade there at their competitors. And you can pay up to $25,000 of your purchase on a credit card without any additional charge, which is most than any other auction house in any other part of the game. So that's great too. You can really. They're really giving you a hard. It's hard to say no. I think in a lot of these cases with all the options they're giving.
Yeah,
you.
when you used to have to like pony up the next day, you start to sort of think
Oh.
things. But the second somebody
Sweat a
gives
bit.
you 3 months and a credit card, you can kind of go, yeah, I'll figure this out, kind of a thing, which is kind of great. And look, I am the first to admit, and this is true of like, look, it's true with big ticket items. It's true with small ticket items. I take advantage of their 3 month thing all the time because it just allows me, honestly, it just allows me to sort of figure out, like, if I am going to sell something, if I am going to get rid of something. By the way, sometimes I'm selling something from a different part of my collection. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to sell a couple of monkey radiator caps to kind of pay for my prop stuff. But it gives me, again, with the 3 month plan, you put 20% down, on the credit card, because that, by the way, that's, that takes care of that. And then you've got a little bit of wiggle room. You can figure it all out. And it just makes life easier. The other possible
Do
way
you ever sell
yeah.
monkey radiator, sell props to buy monkey radiator caps?
all
Does it
the
also go
time?
the
I
other
get
way?
rid of all
Are
my
you just-
Star Wars
is it
stuff.
just-
No, it is not a two-way street. I'm not even sure it's a street,
Okay.
by the way. I don't think it works even in any direction. No one wants
Yeah,
those monkey
it's-
radiator caps. Yeah. The
Yeah,
funniest thing, by the way, about
it's a
monkey radiator caps,
it's a banana tree.
I
let's
don't
face
think
it.
PropStore is going to enjoy this in the middle of their ad. But by the way, it's like I bought all those monkey radiator caps and there has not been a single monkey radiator cap for sale since. So somebody just like sold them all. And I think like that collecting field has closed. Like you would think they'd keep going, but maybe I've cornered the market or something,
Well,
and they've just
like
disappeared. So I don't
Lucas
know.
and Spielberg with the Rockwells, so
Yep.
go Dave Mandel and the monkey radiator caps. So you
But
now control
that
the
is why
economics.
I'll be bidding in this new prop store auction, the 21st to 24th of June. This is also a way you can pay, although this is a funny thing to be saying right now. Prop Store recently started accepting cryptocurrency for its entertainment memorabilia live auction. Through BitPay, customers can select from a variety of popular cryptocurrencies, assuming the ones you have aren't any of the ones that went bankrupt this week, to purchase their items, giving greater flexibility for collectors across the globe. So, for example, instead of paying $100 for something, you can use one of your cryptocurrencies that's now worth 30 cents, and you can pay with that cryptocurrency. So that's
There you
a
go.
great way of getting rid of your cryptocurrency that is now worthless. Yeah. So that's a
But good thing they have a payment plan. So
yes,
even
you
if
can,
your cryptocurrency crashed,
exactly.
you can still pay over time.
And with a credit
you
card,
can
a
also pay with-
combination.
That's right. I like this next one. You can pay with consignment. So if you have your eye on something coming up in the auction, you can increase your buying power by consigning items ahead of time to PropStore's next auction and getting either cash advances or working out a deal with them for some kind of base rate for what the item is worth. So you can put something into the next auction to give you buying power in this auction, which I think that's a really smart idea.
This, and I think this is really great of PropStore to do this because it's something that other auction houses have done, and they sort of, I think, we're doing it a little bit over the last couple of years, but I think it's now sort of more an official part of their plans. And you can email them at consign@propstore.com, show them what you're thinking about, pictures, whatever, and they'll work it out with you. And it's a really wonderful way, especially, again, you don't want to necessarily sell something before the auction, but you end up winning something, and then you start to think to yourself, how do I do this, whatever. Or maybe you want to sell it already, but you want to put it in auction, not do a private sale and get sort of a really lowball offer from me and Ryan. You want to put it in the auction, and it gives you sort of house money to play with. And it's really smart because I think it makes it easier for us, the buyer. And I think it's also really smart for PropStore because it allows them to sell stuff but get new things for the future auction. auctions. And so auctions beget other auctions, which I just think is, I don't know. I just think it's really smart, and it's probably, um, again, it's something I've taken advantage of, and it's something I will take advantage of again. It's a great way, especially, if you have a couple of things you're thinking about getting rid of again, you're not sure, you throw them in there and it comes off your bill. It's just a great thing, or covers your bill, by the way, the whole thing. And it
There you
just
go.
really wonderful. And a
I have two big
reminder,
consignments
yeah, go
in
for
this
it.
auction that
Do you? Oh,
I have
wow.
two big. I do, yeah. That I'm hoping are three actually. That I'm hoping are going to pay down some future debt that I'm going to have
Right.
with Prop Store. So I'm looking forward to that myself. So hey, use Prop Store's different payment options to make it easier for you to get pieces you really want in the June 21st to 24th auction, and register today at propstore.com/live auction to get early access to the PDF version of the catalog before the full online catalog is released. Because pre-bidding starts already on Tuesday, May 24th. So it's coming right up. And don't forget to use your discount code Dave10.
Most important. We've been hearing people
Dave10.
are using this. Yes, people are using the discount code Dave10, Ryan10, or what? Or Ryan10,
or Ryan
what?
10. Me,
Oh,
yeah.
I said
I
and
plugged
Ryan
you
10.
a bunch of times.
I didn't
Yeah,
say
okay.
or. I said and. Both.
Okay.
Two purchases.
Okay.
You should buy two things every time. Buy two things at once. First use Dave 10 on like a big ticket item, then Ryan 10 on a very teeny tiny,
just
like $20
copy of a
item.
storyboard.
Yeah, exactly. A nice Xerox, maybe signed by somebody or something like that. You get 10% off your buy it now order through the end of this season. And you'll also be able to vote for your favorite host, one of us, Dave or Ryan. So, I'm just saying I don't have, I have a show, but I don't have a big, House of Dragon kind of Game of Thrones show. And I'm just saying I could really use a pick-me-up. That's all I'm saying. I just, I think I could use some good news. I just think I would feel better about myself if I were to win this contest.
Oh, that's sad. We should get back to the show. I want to go back to the beginning a little bit, which is the first book I was ever given as a movie prop collector, and it's a book that we've covered on this very podcast, which is The Ruby Slippers of Oz by Rhys Thomas. So if you go way back into the Wayback Machine, our second, third, fourth episode is very early in the run.
He was a wonderful guest on the show. It's worth checking out, but more so than checking out our show, if that didn't get you to pick up the book, pick that up and read it, because it is just I don't know, it's Hollywood prop collecting 101. And it talks about, and
it's the story of a prop collector.
It is the story of a prop collector,
which is what I love
who
about.
Basically, in certain ways sort of died for his art in certain ways. But it really takes you back to, starts in the 70s, and basically with sort of, the selling off of the MGM, the big MGM prop auction, sort of, which is sort of one of the defining sort of bullet points in the history of prop collecting and costume collecting. And so it really takes you through that, not all the way, obviously, up till now, but into the modern era. And even certainly we've talked about like that Dorothy costume, which, by the way, someone is suing over it. But I don't know if you saw that. But yeah,
of
hilarious.
Course, yes.
But and so it doesn't get into the modern day craziness, but it certainly gets very close. And a lot of the personalities and types of collectors and how collecting works, and what happens when people think there's only one of something and then they realize there's multiples, and all of that kind of stuff. I'll tell you something which will also connect to a book in a second, but I'm watching The Offer on Paramount Plus, which is this 10-part making of the Godfather series that I guess is based on Al Ruddy's remembrance. And not surprisingly, it turns out in this show, Al Ruddy was the most important person in the history of the making of The Godfather. But but there's a scene, literally, I just was watching it, where, and again, I don't even think that any of this is correct, but it was interesting just to see it, where Robert Evans, Pacino, they want to cast Pacino. Robert Evans hated Pacino, and then finally comes around on Pacino, and they're going to cast Pacino. But Pacino has taken a role in an MGM movie called like The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. And they've got to get him out of this contract. And most of the other making of books, which I'll get to in a second, the real story apparently was they called Sidney Korshak, who was the very I don't know what word to use, connected Hollywood labor lawyer, I'll simply say. And Sidney
Okay.
Korshak made it all go away and got them Pacino. That's what
Hmm.
Robert Evans says in his book, which, by the way, is a huge hoot and a half. The Robert Evans, The Kid Stays in the Picture. I don't know if you can believe any of it, but it's
Yes.
just a wonderful read. And also, by the way, great audiobook read by him. And there's a sequel too, but the original one is the great one. But anyway, Sidney Korshak is the one that sort of apparently made it all go away. And what ends up happening is Pacino gets to do The Godfather. And then Robert De Niro, who I think was going to play Paulie Gatto, who gets killed by Clemenza, takes the Pacino part in The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, which then allows him, because he's then not in Godfather 1, to, of course, play the young Don in Godfather 2. So everything works out for a reason for you Godfather fans. But anyway, in the offer, there's no Sidney Korshak. The Robert Evans character goes to lunch with the head of MGM, and they horse trade. They trade Pacino and De Niro and like a book or something, the rights to a book. But at some point, Robert Evans, who's sort of hates this guy from MGM, he's sort of an asshole, and he sort of says to him like, you know, it's like, how are things at Paramount? And he goes, well, not bad. We haven't had to sell off all our props and costumes in an auction yet. And it's a very like, it's a funny reference
Oh, good.
to the famous MGM sale that, I don't know, in my world, I didn't think anyone really knew about it. And I thought it was just a really nice detail. That was a very long story to tell that piece of it. But anyway,
It was, but
yeah,
it
no,
was a good payoff. Yeah.
I cannot stop watching The Offer. I can't necessarily say it's great, but I can't stop watching it. But I did want to say, and I may have mentioned this, I mentioned The Godfather Papers by Puzo, which is his version of making it. But there's a wonderful book that just came out by Mark Seal called Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli, which is a more researched and nuanced history of the making of The Godfather. And it is fantastic. And again, not necessarily super prop specific, but certainly prop adjacent. And just if you're a Godfather fan, it is a wonderful
Yeah.
book.
The
Yeah, as is, by the way, the Coppola Notebooks. Do you know that book? That the Coppola book? Do you know what I'm talking?
I
Yeah.
do, but again, another thing that I don't
Uh,
have. But
oh,
so I was going
yeah.
to ask, what is the definitive making of on The
I think
Godfather?
it's
Is
the
it the
Seal book
Leave the
now. I
Gun,
think
Take the
it's the
Gun?
Seal book. To me, it
Okay.
is. That's the
Okay.
one.
Well,
Yeah,
good
yeah.
then, because I bought the Kindle version of that, and because
You
I've
will
never
read
read
it
a
in
making
four
of on The
seconds. It
Godfather.
flies. It's really well
Okay.
written. It's
Great.
very juicy and whatever, and you'll read it very quickly, and it's really really enjoyable. And and I would put it up there. Also, I think we talked about it too with that Chinatown book from last year, the making of
Oh
Chinatown book,
God,
which was
yes.
so wonderful as well.
The Long
Yes, The
Goodbye.
Long Goodbye, which is just
Yeah,
fantastic.
Sam
Yeah.
Wasson. Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
really
I don't know
great.
how I pulled both of those
The
names
Sam
out of my
Wasson is
head, but
impressive. I might have said it was
it
that
was a clear.
guy that wrote the, I was going to do one of those, but because
Yeah.
he did
Yeah.
write that incredible, oh Christ, why can't I? The choreographer,
Oh, Bob Fosse.
the Bob Fosse book, yes, the which is he wrote this
Yeah.
Bob
All
Fosse
that
book
jazz. Yeah.
that is just incredible about all of his work in general. Anyway, we're going, yeah.
I've actually heard him on a podcast, and he is a fascinating interview. Sam, he's a really young guy, and he just loves old Hollywood stuff. And maybe we can track him down and try to get him on and talk.
I don't know him, but he's a friend of a friend, and I bet we could. I emailed him just to tell him how much I like the book, and I bet we could twist his arm. But
Make it
yeah,
happen.
that the Chinatown book is incredible. The Fosse book is incredible. And then back to the Godfather, the Seal book is incredible. And like I said, the Puzo one is fun. So, and the Coppola book is basically, it's a printing of his version of the Godfather novel by Puzo with all his hand annotations that basically talk about what he thinks is important in the scene, how he wants to shoot the scene, things he doesn't need. And it's where a lot of the details that did then go into, and again, it's some of it's in this crazy The Offer, but it's sort of, talking about like, especially the way he sort of like is trying to emphasize the family and like talking about these things while they're cooking and all of that kind of stuff. Clemenza showing him, Michael, how to make sauce and all that kind of stuff. These are the notes and the things that come out in the book and what he's trying to do. And it's just fantastic, just fantastic. So yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Here's one we sort of glanced
Yep.
over, which is a big favorite of mine. is Future
Oh,
Noir,
I got that too.
which is the
That, by the way, talk about a book that
okay,
I wish was on the Kindle, because I wish that was a book that I just like
yeah.
had in my phone occasionally. And I want to tell a specific story from. Well, go ahead, tell that, and then I'll go.
But
Yeah.
it might, but it might be now,
No, I
because have
literally
you read
I looked at
the updated and revised one?
I don't know if that is. I've not read the revised one. I only read the original one. So
Because I was going to say, so there was an original one that was published probably after the director's cut, sort of
yeah.
early '90s, when the film had its kind of its heyday, its new heyday. But recently, I think for the 35th anniversary, it was like 5 years ago. Paul M. Salmon, who's this fascinating author who followed the production around at the time. Expanded all the stuff that he cut out to publish the original book. He just basically he unabridged it. He put all the stuff back in, and it actually has a lot more prop and costume content. So they actually talk about the
Oh,
making
wow.
of the
Okay.
hero
Well,
pistol in it, which I found to be really
back
fascinating. And I think
again
there's a
I
little bit
shall
more
go,
costume
because yeah,
talk,
that's fantastic.
but it's really good, and I think I read it on the
Oh,
Kindle
okay.
when it came out, so it's worth checking. Don't quote me on it. I definitely have the hard copy as well, because it's always worthwhile. It's sort of lacking in the picture department, but the story, in terms of if you want to know the soup to nuts making of Blade Runner from a source that was there at the time, that's the one. And it really is the only, to me, the only Blade Runner reference book that's out there. There's that sketchbook, which is really cool because it's hard to
It's
find. It's sort
fun
of
to
collectible and
see, the
expensive.
Sid Mead drawings and
It's
whatnot. Yes,
fun, but
yes.
it's
It works, by the way, certainly
yeah,
as
because
a
it's
nice accompaniment to the Salmon book. I
mhm,
mean, it's sort of like a nice thing to kind
yeah.
of have. But that book is the book. I mean, talking about reference, whatever, but that's the book that tells the story of the producer that kept the stunt gun that is the one I have in my
Yes.
collection. And it basically,
Yes.
we were talking
Correct.
about this at the beginning. It corroborates the story that basically
You
we
were
sort of
told.
was told, and I have a letter and all of that kind of stuff. But this corroboration is just one of these wonderful sort of facts that came out that I don't know. I didn't feel bad about the purchase, but I felt that much better about the purchase after the fact. I mean, in kind of a great way. So again,
Yeah,
why these books
which is
are,
really good.
I don't know, essential, or at least how they can be essential. But yeah, just an incredible book. Just insane.
So and another in that sort of zone. I mean, actually on Paul M. Salmon, who's an interesting guy, he wrote a probably maybe smallish, shortish book length, but a book length number of articles about Conan the Barbarian
Oh,
that are published from here to there in all of those movie
gotcha. So
magazines
all
from
like
like
the
the 1980s.
cinefantastiques and whatever of the time and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Correct. And Filmmaker
Right.
magazine and whatever. But if you assembled all, because I have them all, and I have the actual magazines, the periodicals from the time, all in like little plastic
Right,
bag
but it's sort of
covers
the
and boards and
Conan
all
book that
that.
was never written, is what you're saying, basically. Yeah.
Correct. But if somebody took the time to put all that stuff together, you would kind of have like maybe a like novella sized making of Conan. And it's the same author, and he was there. He was this guy that followed productions around at the time. He got lucky, did these two big movies in 1982, and just fascinating stuff. I mean, there's a whole page in one of these that's just about how they made the hero swords and who made
Right.
the hilt furniture and how did they carve out the inscription on the blade. It's great stuff
I
that should be
think
in a book.
the
But
the
worthwhile reference
days
to
of
track
sort
down.
of a film set letting on an independent writer, I think one of the great problems is that nowadays when these making of books come out, for the most part, a lot of them are generated by sort of the PR department of the studio. And again, I understand it. Obviously, I understand why. It's usually the years later that you kind of get the better sort of blow by blow books. It's just a fact of life. I mean, I think the art books that come out when something comes out are great. The making ofs are usually glossed over, especially in the sort of in the immediate aftermath. And it's funny. This is more gossip than anything else. When they were making the new Star Wars movies, the last three of them, I think they sort of almost like gave up at some point. And the rumor was it was just like no one really wanted them telling the blow by blow making ofs and stuff, and at some point they just kind of wanted the story, you know what I mean? And so it just was sort of an interesting thing. And look, maybe someday, 20 years from now, we'll get a little more of the blow by blow, but the idea of the independent journalist, I mean, heck, the Devil's Candy. I mean, I don't know if did you listen to that have
Yeah.
you listened to the podcast version of that they did recently?
No.
I think it's the second. I'm so lost now. I think it's the second season, maybe, of the TMC. Is it the TMC?
Oh, TCM.
The TCM one. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, the making of Bonfire of the
Yes,
Vanities.
exactly. That
Yes,
started
that
as
I did.
the
That
original
I did
book
listen to. Yeah.
version of that by the woman that hosted, who's Julie, maybe Julie Salmon. Also, Julie.
Yeah.
Yes, it's funny enough, a Salmon. No, Julie something. Julie. Anyway.
Julie something.
Yeah, I should look it up, but
she followed the production.
She was allowed in on the production, and De Palma let her. I mean, he knew what he was doing, and he knew it was going. I mean, I don't think he knew it was going to be what it was, but he allowed it to happen. And obviously, it one of the great sort of disasters, and it's a fascinating look into it, and gets into from tiny details to big picture stuff. And then I had read it when it came out, and the reading of it was insane. And then all these years later, they did the podcast, and in the podcast, she still has some of her. I shouldn't say some of. She has her original interview recordings, and so stories even that I knew, to hear the actual people, the voices of them retelling, or I should say, first person telling some of these accounts of these sort of things that were going wrong. Just insane. I mean, it's a
it's incredible
piece of madness, but one of the great making ofs of all time. I mean, just truly one of the greats.
Well, good segue, Dave, because we were making a fairly big show over here, and it was as a guy who loves books and loves making of books, I was really insistent that we have a cool, good making of story to accompany along House of the Dragon. So we actually have, and I've already read the manuscript, and it's really fantastic. This book coming probably in the fall, I think November, December time. So after the show is
for the
all
holidays,
aired out
for the
and
holidays,
everything
a
is
nice
done.
Christmas gift.
Correct. But when it's not a spoiler, when the content in the book is not a spoiler, but it's really, I mean, yes, it's it's funded by Warner Media, it's overseen by them, but it very much is the story of the making of our show. And what I like about it is it's not just the art book that you always get. It is the story of how did this thing come together,
cool.
and the casting process and all that, and how they built the throne. And this woman, Gina McIntyre, wrote it, and she's really fantastic. She did the she's done a bunch of these crazy making of books, but she did the making of or the art of, and the photography of, and then the costumes of Game of Thrones at the end of the run of the original show. They came out with those huge tomes, those three really big ones. So she did all of those. So she came on to do this, and she's really good and thorough and knows how to get in and get the answers. But she was following around the production from the beginning, she lived in the US, but she was like calling people and interviewing, and then she came to set and spent a few weeks on set just following everybody around and getting all the last interviews that she could see, and going into the workshops and seeing how things were made. But it should be a pretty comprehensive story at the end of this.
Was there ever a moment where you just went, "Oh God, that's going to be in the book," like that? Did you ever have that sense of it?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, it does show the warts a bit of how first
warts are good.
Bumpy
Warts
and
are
whatever.
good. I think that's what makes these things interesting.
I think so. It makes it exciting. But again, it's always the case that the book written 20 years later is going
people
to be
are a little more like
interesting.
Oh, I didn't have the career I wanted. I think it's time to tell everything that happened. No,
exactly. When it's no longer a tie-in piece to the promotion of the original show. We were talking, it's funny, so look for that. It'll be interesting. I'm hoping to maybe get to write a little something in it at some point myself, but I'm just talking about how these making of books have been really important to me, and all that coming up through the ranks as I have. But a book a subject that we talked about last week, the making of Tombstone, the John Farkas book. That is a full-on warts and all, like nobody pulled a single punch in that book, and it's just delightful and shows you the mess of that production and what it was. And there's some pretty good photography in there, but it is, that's one of those that's a movie that you could make the making of limited series about, because it was just so insane, that entire
Yeah, I mean,
production, and
episode
firing the
2 when they
director on like
fired at
day
the end of
3.
episode 2 when they fired the director, yeah.
End of the pilot,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Well, that's the other thing,
that's
by the way,
got to be the end of the pilot.
the offer is 10 episodes long, so you gotta stretch these things out. That's why we're not gonna fire,
Yeah.
Jar until the end of episode 2. But
Yeah,
no,
yeah, okay,
yeah,
okay,
that
very
is
good.
a nutso, book, and just a great blow by blow. You mentioned you sort of, and again, I love the warts and all stuff, but there are, with some of these, just the art alone, there are just great ones. And I think right up there, just to put sort of up, uh, just again, also, I think how still important those movies are. The art of those Lord of the Rings movies are just those books. I mean, there's
Yes.
making ofs
Yes.
too.
Oh
I mean,
God.
at some point there's books on armor and whatever. So it's like, I don't even know how to keep track of all of them, because there are literally so many books that have pictures of everything on those
Yep.
movies. They are so well documented. But the art of, I wrote down The Art of the Fellowship of the Ring by Gary Russell, and then I think he did all the other movies. And again, that original trilogy of the three of them, those books are incredible, just in terms of the art, from the art to the screen, that journey. Those books kill me. They just kill me. And I don't know. I have a piece from the movie, whatever, but it's just like, it's just such a feat of movie making in general that I love those books. And
They're great.
just
They are.
just
And I
wild.
bought
Yeah.
the Houghton Mifflin. I bought those all the time. They had these little like sale shows that they would come and do around Barnes and Noble. So I would hunt down
Right. You
this
wait
sale
for the
show, because
yeah,
you could
you're
go
right.
and
Get
buy
them
them
all
a couple
cheaper.
weeks
Yes,
early,
exactly.
and meet the publisher and all that stuff. I did all that nerdy stuff back in the day. The time we had. I have a duo of Muppets
Oh,
books
go for it.
for you. So the first one, the reference book, is called Jim Henson: The Works. It's by this guy Christopher Finch, and it was written, I think it was written just posthumously with Jim Henson. It was kind of done as a sort of in memory of Jim Henson at the end of his very illustrious career. He died very young, in his 50s, from this like freak infection. But that book really covered the life and times of Jim Henson. But it's a coffee table book done about
Right.
his work, so it talks about all the making of the Muppets, and there are these wonderful photos in there and great storytelling about himself and his career. So it's a really good reference book. And then if you're interested in Henson, his biography
The
is really
biography
fascinating.
is
It's written by this guy
incredible. I thought it was,
Brian
yeah,
J. Jones.
just fantastic.
Yeah. And it's just a great read. I mean,
And
again, as a
I
reference book,
believe
I
they're
don't know, but
making an Apple documentary on Henson, and I think that book is
oh,
connected to it, but I'm not sure about that. But I think
oh,
maybe.
cool. Okay.
But
Oh,
yeah,
great. Oh,
because
that'll
obviously
be really
when
great.
I was reading the biography, I was constantly going on YouTube and finding, like old episodes of like Sam and Friends and whatnot. I'll throw one more in. There's a Muppet Show hardcover from like the late 70s or early 80s, when the show was at its, insane peak. And what people don't really remember was it was sort of made like this sort of syndicated show. It wasn't made by one of the networks. It was made over in the UK and then sold all around the world. And it was huge. I mean, it was really crazy
Yeah.
huge. And they made this sort of, I guess, what we'd call a coffee table book, but this like Muppet Show hardcover book that's just great. And it's a little bit of everything. So it's hard to say it's a prop book or whatever, but it's a very fun book. I long out of print now, but very, very findable, that I enjoy.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. I need
Yeah. You'll get a
to
kick out of
track that
Yeah.
down. If you,
Yeah.
yeah, if you remember that title, please send
I
it
think
to
it
me.
may be the
We'll
Muppet
post it on
Show
the feed.
book,
Also,
but
just
yeah.
on the topic of Brian J. Jones, the author of the Jim Henson book, while we have it, he also wrote a wonderful George Lucas biography that covers Lucas from his days as a teenager in Northern California.
Which one
and
is
his
that? I
racing
wonder if I've
days
read
and
that
the
one.
big accident.
Do you know what that one's called?
I think it's
Just
George
George Lucas?
Lucas: A
Oh,
Life.
maybe.
I
I don't
think
know.
is A Life.
Okay.
I think is the
I've
title
definitely read, at
of
some
the book,
point
but
I've read like Skywalking and something else, and they all blur
yeah.
together. But yeah.
But this is more recent. This is
Okay.
more recent, so there's a little more removed
Oh,
from
okay.
it,
I'll
and
check
it's
that out
very
then.
well researched, and it's very comprehensive, and it's really, really interesting. And at some point, it's cool because Lucas and Henson cross
Yeah.
over. So if you're reading it in the shadow of the Henson book, you realize that some of that research sort of agrees, and you're seeing the story from the other side, from the Lucas side. And it's just Yoda, obviously, but it's fascinating. And just a just a really good read. And also on the Lucas topic, somewhat adjacent, is again friend Brendan Allinger and JW Rinzler's book on Howard Kazanjian, which is really great because it covers the sort of this illustrious career of this great producer who touched so many things, because he started as Hitchcock's AD and then went all the way.
Yeah, I was about to say, I love obviously all the Star Wars and Raiders stuff, but what's insane is the Disney movies this guy worked on, the Hitchcock I mean, the career.
He was the AD on the Wild Bunch.
Exactly. The career before sort of the Lucas stuff is insane. It's just insane, which is kind of wonderful, and a hell of a storyteller. Yeah, really, really cool.
Yeah, I think it's called Howard Kazanjian Producer, and it's by JW Rinzler, and our friend of the show Brandon had helped I think edit and put that book together.
I got a couple of more sort of like, I guess maybe a little less making of-y and biography, but like some actual prop books, and I kind of put those in their own category.
Yeah.
They're about as close as you'll find to like prop books, but one that I love, and we may have mentioned it before, it's called, I want to get the title right, Fake Love Letters, Forged Telegrams, and Prison Escape Maps, Designing Graphic Props for Filmmaking by Annie Atkins. And she's a graphic designer, prop maker.
Oh, that's cool.
And the big one is a Grand Budapest Hotel, which obviously we've talked a lot about, the Mendel's labels and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
She makes all of that kind of wonderful, dare I say, wonderfully fussy, specific Wes Anderson stuff, for example.
Yeah.
And it's basically about that, and it is filled with wonderful pictures about it all. And I huge fan of that book. And then connected, which you've brought up before, is The Magic of Mina Lima, celebrating the graphic design studio behind Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. They're the ones with the store over in London, but they're the ones that gave all of like the Harry Potter graphics, like the Quibbler or whatever, it's the Tattler,
yeah,
and
the newspapers, but also the letters that come to Harry,
the letters, the invite, the Hogwarts letter, all of that stuff comes,
the chocolate frog wrappers
from their table, all the various candy and toy products, the butter beer, all of that stuff comes from them. So it's just a gorgeous book, very prop heavy and design heavy and really wonderful. And there's a third one, which I actually only picked up recently. I did not know about it, but I picked it up once we were talking about sort of doing this. So I actually I was kind of going through doing searches just to try and remember books I owned without having to like look through my shelves of just like the topic. And then I found this book that I'd never even seen before. It's a book called Prop Man, from John Wick to Silver Linings Playbook, from Boardwalk Empire to Parks and Recreation. And it's written or co-written by this prop guy, Ross McDonald, and then this other guy, Stephen Heller. And basically he did props for all those shows. He also did for the National Treasure movies, which has, wonderful props. And it is about the props. It is about the construction, the making of, the designing of these things, and why like you need a specific matchbook for a scene and you have to make them, whatever it is. And it is, you don't have to love the specific projects, although I do think there are some wonderful props in those movies, but it is a celebration of like what prop people,
the art form,
do. Yes, exactly. And I think that's what's true about all three of those books. I think we just were sort of talking about, and I'm just a big fan of all three of those books. Again, I think both letting you into that world, how it happens, and then from a collecting standpoint, it helps you understand the notion of what they make and sometimes how many they make, whether it's specifically or generally, and like how sometimes things you're seeing, how much time is spent on some of those things and how some of them are just a regular item with a sticker on it. Again, it's all of that in sort of these books. And I just think there's you can appreciate it, but also you will understand things and you will get to see actual items from some of these movies that you might love too, which is a nice extra thing. So huge fan of those three. Yeah. Those were super fun. Anything else on your list?
No, that sort of covered it. And I did get a text message, I have to tell you, while we were recording.
Uh-oh.
And it's really taken every fiber of my being not to just quickly just say goodbye everybody and run the credits music and close out. But we just got sent the Prop Store catalog. for the upcoming auction. And I think
I guess
we're
so coming next episode, which we may record in 5 minutes, but yeah, we
yes,
may
exactly.
end this one and
So I
start the
think
next one. Yeah.
so I think next week we'll probably not, so this Thursday, what will that be? This
I want to say that they
19th,
said to
Thursday
me,
the 19th.
this is
So
going to be
Thursday the
Thursday the
26th.
19th. So Thursday the 26th, but I think the catalog is going to the world possibly on the 25th. So maybe we'll try and get the
Yes.
show out a day early so that the day the
Yeah.
the prop store catalog is released, you'll be able to listen to this show. And it also coincides with Star Wars Celebration, where you'll be able to see stuff too. But we will, those are our coming attractions, if you will.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes, but we're I keep hearing. I was out with Tim Laws this week. We went to my first Premier League match. Went to the Spurs Arsenal, the North London derby, and
the beautiful
the
game.
Spurs just stomped Arsenal. It was glorious. It was like the most insane. And like I've been to the Stanley Cup finals when the Devils won the Stanley Cup. The game they won the Stanley Cup I've
cool.
been to, which you felt the arena vibrating under your feet and move, like undulating.
I went to
so
one
many people were
Stanley
jumping up
Cup
and down.
game, the one that the Rangers won, but I went to game one that they lost, where the other team's goalie
Stefan
just
Richer.
just didn't let anything in or something. Anyway, but so not quite as exciting. But did you ole? Did you chant?
We did. I did all the singing that I could. I knew and everything. I tried to play along. Stood the whole game. It was really great. But walking into the stadium, Tim's like, you're getting the catalog soon, and man, you and Dave are just going to shit your pants. That's what he told me.
Maybe that'll be the title of next episode. The next episode's title, you've heard it here first, is Dave and Ryan shit their pants. A look at the new prop store catalog. So we've got a title too.
But I keep hearing these little teases. So I'm very, we know one big thing that's in there for Mr. Mandel, but I'm very excited and also fearful to dive into this thing. But it should be a really, really cool, fun episode next week. And
that seems like, by the way, a good time. Well, I don't know, but we will
talk about a big book.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Talk about big books that you need on a shelf, a good big coffee table book. But we should wrap this one up. This one wasn't bad, a tight hour and change. We haven't really gotten some feedback. We're getting a lot of we're just happy to get the show. So I guess we'll take that and say thank you. But continue to be curious about whether people like these sort of more bite-sized ones or if they like the bigger ones. I've heard both, but we'll dig more into that. Should we play the game real quick? Sorry. The deep dives.
I think people like the in-depth of the deep dives, but that doesn't necessarily mean it all.
That doesn't mean we
can't
split it up. Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. You got any topics for the game? I have an odd one if you don't.
Yeah, go for it. I was looking for a book theme, and I sort of had a thing, but you go. I picked last week.
Honestly, because it does have really fun props. I was going to say National Treasure, which I don't know. I don't own anything from National Treasure, but it's such a great prop movie. It's a lot like The Mummy to me, which is I've never quite pulled the trigger, but I enjoy the heck out of. I enjoy watching it. I could literally watch it any day of the week. I could put it on right now and watch it, and the props are excellent. I mean, it's really
and they work and they function and there's interactivity
exactly.
in it. Yeah, they're works of art.
I'm a huge fan, and for me, I'm going in that. I don't know. I started to think of one, and I was like, "Oh wait, maybe that's the second movie," and I don't know if that's in violation because I was trying to think of. There's that piece of the desk that fits into the Resolute desk, but I think that's the second one. They kind of get get a little bit blurry. But I'll go for the Ben Franklin spectacles that he uses.
Oh, those are cool.
With all those pieces and the twisty things. That is a great functioning but also well-made prop. They're Ben Franklin from the past 3D glasses, and I love those. And there's something futuristic colonial about them that just jumps out and reminds me of that movie beyond just the Declaration of Independence with a note on the back kind of a thing, which is good.
Well, that's what I was going to go for.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I was going to go for the Declaration because because it's the MacGuffin. It's the MacGuffin of the movie, and it's the big prop, and I just love it's the Declaration of Independence, but it also has this secret passage on the back of it, and I think that's really cool. I mean, I love all the functioning books and things like that. I mean, I don't know. It's like it's a good question from that movie. Do you want the really cool, well built prop, or do you want the thing that's the sort of the most important story piece? Right. It's that weighing.
Yeah,
that
I
weighing
definitely
up
don't think I don't know if everyone would recognize the Ben Franklin spectacles, or also that that ship pipe from the beginning that then, it's like the first mission where he gets betrayed by Sean Bean, and then in the back end of the movie it fits in, and it's the key thing. It's like I don't know, it's like a scrimshaw pipe of like a ship or something, whatever. That's a very, again, that and the spectacles are very sort of cool active props, but I think everyone in the world remembers there's a note written on the back of the Declaration of Independence. So I get that. All righty. Well, hey, as always,
this has been great.
This is good. Please let us know about your favorite books. You can follow us. There's going to be, obviously, we're going to be on the YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of. We're all over social media at Props Podcast. What is our email?
dreamsaremadeofpodcast@gmail.com.
Write us. Tell us about your favorite making of and prop books. We want to hear from you. And as always, please like, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and tell your friends about this show. That would be very helpful.
Fill your shopping carts, your online shopping carts, with all these book recommendations we gave you. And let us know if there's something you have trouble tracking down. I'm curious what of these things.
Or if you love one of these, or if you didn't know about it. We'd like to hear. We'd like to hear from you. We're still trying to figure out. We want to start figuring out we want to bring a couple of our listeners on at some point for something. We'll figure that out. But maybe we.
That would be good.
Follow us on Facebook too, even though Facebook is horrible. Twitter's horrible. They're all horrible, but we want to try and get a little more sense of our community of listeners, and maybe try and figure out some things we can do with you guys. So that's a project for down the line. But we'll see you next week for Dave and Ryan Shit Their Pants. Bye-bye.